Hello, and in today's video we are doing championship predictions for the 2023 to 24 campaign. Yes, that's right, we're back on the Reverse the Hornet channel with a video today looking at my season predictions for the EFL Championship 2023 to 24. I'm getting so excited for this upcoming campaign, and what I thought I'd do today is talk through some of the signings that have been made and where I think that affects my table prediction for the upcoming campaign, as well as top scorers, who will be the surprise package, and much, much more. So if you do like championship content, I am a Watford fan, so you know it's all about Watford, but it's also championship as well when there's weekly predictions when I have the time. But I always do these videos at the start of the year. It's the 25th of July today, so we're going for it for the championship campaign. So do smash a like on it. As I said, share it with your mates if you do like championship content and you know that they do as well. And get in the comments, what are your table predictions for the upcoming season? Because it's a big campaign and ultimately it's a really interesting championship one, because there are some big clubs in this division now. Some surprising clubs that you didn't think maybe would be there last season, but they're here now. And yeah, it's going to be really fascinating to see how it all unravels. So without further ado, we're going to look at each of the clubs really and see what kind of business they've done, and then help that to kind of inform my championship predictions. So first off, we've got Birmingham City here. Obviously not the best of seasons for them last year. They had a few off the pitch problems, and Troy Deeney of course has left his boyhood club there. But the management of, you know, really, to be honest, like I didn't expect much with John Eustace going there. As a former Watford, you know, legend as a player, I thought, yeah, that's a nice thing to see, but will he do well? But I was really impressed by, you know, he kept them up and he did the job. But Birmingham, in terms of their signings, they've brought in Dion Sanderson from Wolves. Ethan Laird is quite a good United prospect. Also Tyler Roberts from Leeds, interesting signing there. And then a few others like Siriki Dembele from Bournemouth. He's got some talent. And they've also gone and got Rico Brown from Birmingham. So what do I rate their transfer activity so far? It's okay. It's not amazing, but it will do. In terms of their outgoings, of course, Tahith Chong has gone to Luton, as has Jobe Bellingham. So Bellingham, obviously, his brother Jude Bellingham has now gone on to be a Galactico. What a career he's had, but there's still a lot of promise about his brother Jobe, and he's gone off to the Black Cats. So bit of a big loss that really for Birmingham, because you'd have liked him to have grown a bit more for Jobe, but you know, it is what it is. George Friend as well has left the club and gone to Bristol Rovers, so that's in League One. Also, as I said, I've mentioned Troy Deeney as well. Harley Dean, who was a bit of an icon for Birmingham really, he's also left the club, and so has Maxime Collin. So yeah, in terms of players leaving the club, it's been a bit of a tough one for Birmingham this window so far, but we'll see if they do any more business. And basically I have to just do this prediction based on the business they've done so far. Of course, things can change, signings can be made, and maybe they can do better than I think they do right now, but I've got to go with what I'm feeling in my gut. Blackburn has been quite a quiet window for them so far. I mean, they have got a few signings through the door, so Sondre Tronstad from Vitesse, and also the signing of Arnold Sigurdsson from Moscow is quite an exciting one. He's got a lot of ability, Arnold Sigurdsson. So don't mind that transfer at all. In terms of sales, well, obviously, you know, Ben Brereton Diaz is going to hurt for them because he was their talisman for so long. He's gone to Villarreal on a free transfer. Also, they've sold Daniel Ayala, the long-standing championship defender, had his time at Middlesbrough, but he's now been released. And also Bradley Dack as well, who's, you know, a bit of a cult hero for Blackburn. He's gone, so I think it's gonna hurt Blackburn, a few of those sales, but they were kind of sales you thought were going to happen with Diaz. He was going to likely leave, and Bradley Dack coming towards the end of his time at Blackburn. The same goes for Ayala. So interesting that. Bristol City, some interesting signings. Stefan Bajic is quite a good player. I've heard from Valenciennes, and also they've gone for Rob Dickey from QPR, very decent centre back. So a couple of nice signings in there. A few signings I'm not too sure about, haven't heard of really. But Rob Dickey's a good player for Championship level. Also, they've let go of Jay De Silva, the left back. He's gone to Coventry, so that's a not ideal scenario. He was quite good last time for for Bristol, and then they've also gone and sold Kane Wilson to Derby. So yeah, interesting that. Moving on from Cardiff. Now Cardiff, of course, the main story here is Aaron Ramsey returns to his former club after, not really having a best of times at Juventus and just being a bit in and out. And then I think he went to Rangers at some point. So it's been a bit all over the place. Obviously, he's been at Nice recently, but he's now back. But he is 32. We've got to remember that. So exciting as it is, will that mean it will solve all of Cardiff's worries? Not necessarily, because they did flirt with a relegation a lot of times last season. They did just about stay up, but I think it will be another tricky season for Cardiff. But Ramsey is still a great signing. Also, Carlan Grant is a good bit of business from West Brom. I thought, at West Brom, Carlan Grant did pretty well for a few years. But yeah, that's a really interesting signing. So some nice signings there, as well as Yaku Mete from the relegated Reading. That's a nice signing. So yeah, not too bad, to be honest, with Cardiff's business. They've spent a lot. In terms of, they've made a lot of transfers early on here, but they haven't spent that much actually, with obviously the Ramsey deal only 2.5 million. But yeah, some interesting signings and not too bad, but they still have a lot of defensive problems. I know they've signed Gutas, but I'm not sure how he'll get on, and Denham as well, but I feel like their defence still needs fixing. But they have got in Dillon Phillips in goal, so let's see if he can make a difference in that squad. Then in terms of outgoings, I mean, the main one really is Carlan Grant, because obviously I mentioned they've signed Carlan Grant, but basically with that, it was a loan transfer, so he will be an outgoing in 2024. It says that there, just ignore that. Sorry Cabba is an interesting one. He was linked with Watford for a bit, the centre forward who, has got some eyes for goal and does do well, Sorry Cabba, but no, he's ended up going to Midtjylland. So not Watford, but that's going to be an interesting one for sure. It does say end of loan June 30th, so maybe that he's now come back. I'm not quite sure how that one works. But the main one to really talk about, I guess, is Tom Sang. I mean, he's gone to Port Vale. I mean, he's a decent right back at a nice age. So yeah, interesting that. And Connor Wickham as well has been released. So I don't think their sales will hurt them too much, but yeah, Sorry Cabba is an interesting one. I wonder if he's going to still stay at the club or not now, based on the date that I've just realised, 2023. Coventry, though, interesting signings. Obviously, they had a fantastic season last season, really went up and delivered. They didn't quite get promoted, Luton in the final, but they really exceeded a lot of expectations. Great manager in Mark Robbins, and you feel like he's just been there for so long and he's been so good for them for a while. Jay De Silva is a good signing. Ellis Sims from Everton is a very smart piece of business. Ellis Sims not getting enough game time at Everton, and I think he can do really well at Championship level. And also they've gone and signed Julian Da Costa, who has got some ratings really from the French league. So yeah, interesting that one. Whether or not they will hit going straight away, I don't know. I mean, I've heard that guy Lati Bajor is quite good from Swansea, the centre back. So yeah, some decent signings. In terms of outgoings, obviously the main one is Victor Gyökeres. That he was so good for them last season, and he's gone to Sporting. So yeah, not ideal for them losing a player of that calibre. You just felt it was likely with how good of a season he had. Also, they've let go of Martin Waghorn. He's now been released. And the same goes for Sean Maguire there. So, yeah, it's going to hurt without Gyökeres, of course, but they've got some good signings, Coventry, so I don't mind it at all. Huddersfield, obviously, not much in terms of going on, in terms of a lot of these players, they've gone from Huddersfield B to Huddersfield A. But the main one, Chris Maxwell from Blackpool, I don't know a lot of these names, to be honest, so I'm going to have to wait and see how they do, but in terms of outgoings for Huddersfield, I mean, obviously, there's a few here that will hurt them. Dwayne Holmes was a good player for them. Ryan Schofield as well has been released, and also the same goes for Critchlow, because Critchlow was a centre back at 24 years of age, decent potential. He's gone to Peterborough, so yeah, a few of them interesting there. But Rolando Aarons as well, he's got some ability, so. Yeah, I wonder if Huddersfield might struggle with not too big names brought in yet, but we'll wait and see what they do. Hull City obviously had a bit of a surprise start to the season at least. They did really well at the start and then kind of fizzled out and ended up fairly kind of mid-table in the end. But, their owners got big ambitions. Obviously, Ozan Tufan was a good signing for them last year. And they've got Liam Delap, which is a really nice pick-up from Man City. Obviously, very good forward, following the steps of Rory. But, he's got a lot of potential. So I rate that Delap signing. And then the rest of them, I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess Ruben Vinagre could be a nice signing if he does well from the off. I mean, he's been a good player for Wolves in the past, but he's had some time in Sporting. Will he have the ability? I guess for a Championship signing, it's pretty decent. And after he was in the orange of Wolves, he's now again in the orange of Hull. So yeah, some interesting signings. Away from that though, and looking at their sales, I mean, there's some interesting ones. Liam Delap, it looks like, is that end of loan, so maybe he's now going to come back to Man City. I'm not quite sure how that works, but Figueiredo was an interesting player for them. He's now left for Fortaleza, so yeah, some interesting departures, but I don't think they'll hurt them too much, and some interesting additions as well, especially looking at Vinagre. Now Ipswich, I don't know a lot of their players, I'll be honest, but I do know Amari Hutchinson, a very decent player, a lot of ability from Chelsea. So I think that's a nice signing. And I can't really comment on the rest just because I'm not too sure on them. But they've gone and got George Hurst as well from Leicester. In terms of sales for Ipswich, I mean, look, you've got some interesting ones, like, for instance, Richard Keogh, a big legend at centre-back, has gone to Wycombe. And also Joe Pigott as well has left for Leyton Orient. So a few interesting ones, but I don't think that the sales are too bad from Ipswich. Looking at Leeds, obviously they've made a couple of signings. I mean, look, it's interesting that Helder Costa was out on loan, but it seems it might be the end of his loan now. So if he has a revival at Leeds, it'll be interesting. Ethan Ampadu is a really good signing though for Leeds. At his time at Sheffield United a few seasons ago, didn't really get going, but he's certainly a player. He's had time at Chelsea. He's been loaned out a few times, but for Championship level, Ethan Ampadu is a good signing. So, yeah, fair play Leeds. They do need to sort out that defence, that's for sure, after last season. Rodrigo is a big loss for them. They've sold him to Al Rayyan. Look, at the end of the day, he was so good that he was going to leave, but it's a shame that he's not stayed in the Premier League or gone to another, big Championship club, but that's the way it goes. Robin Koch as well. Koch has gone to Eintracht Frankfurt, the centre-back, and I think interesting that, I thought that he might stay, but I guess he's thinking he wants to move elsewhere. Tyler Roberts we've talked about. Robles as well. He didn't really have a good end to the season. He started in goal when Big Sam came in. Didn't really go to plan. And a lot of these players you kind of expected to leave. Aronson, Christensen, Rocker, Forshaw, and Weston McKennie as well. Now, it does seem to be he might return to Juventus. We don't quite know what's going on with that. But yeah, ultimately a lot of players here that are being sold, and I think Leeds will have to try and restructure their team. A lot of players leaving, but maybe they're still good enough to go for the season. We'll have to wait and see. Now, Leicester's transfer business so far has been really interesting. In particular, Harry Winks from Tottenham, a nice pick there because Winks has just not got the minutes that he deserves at Spurs. And Connor Cody as well was swapped from after being at Everton for a bit. He's gone back to Wolves now. Has gone to Leicester. A solid centre back for the Championship. He might be 30 years old, but he certainly is a leader. And for the Championship level, he's gonna, you imagine, do quite well. Also Callum Doyle as well. I think Doyle was, if I'm not mistaken, at Sheffield United last season. Might be a different Doyle, but certainly he's got a lot of ability. The Man City youngster. So that's an interesting loan. Looking at their departures, obviously the main one is James Maddison. That's really going to hurt them. He was their only real good player last season, Maddison. And so he's gone to Tottenham. That should be an exciting transfer, but it's really going to hurt Leicester, of course. And the same goes for Harvey Barnes. He's joined Newcastle, so, that's a big hole to fill. But, of course, they weren't going to stay going down. And then the same goes for Johnny Evans. Johnny Evans, when he's been fit for Leicester, has been a very key centre-back for them. But to Manchester United, I did not see that coming at all. Really weird one. I mean, I guess he's an ex-United player, but did not think United were going to go there. But interesting. And Soyuncu as well, a player who was kind of frozen out a little bit at the club. Interesting move to Atletico Madrid. Good for him, but Yeah, obviously you'd expect that. And then Perez to Betis on a free transfer. Perez has just not got the minutes at all. It's pretty crazy, really. But I wonder if now on that kind of ins column it says end of loan 2023. So maybe he'll go to another club. I don't see him staying in the Championship for Leicester. Tielemans has gone to Aston Villa. So yeah, obviously really nice transfer that for Aston Villa. But he was never going to stay at Leicester. And Bertrand's been released as well, as has Napolis Mendy, and Marty's gone to Besiktas. So yeah, interesting that. Let's move on to Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough have gone and signed a few interesting players, the likes of Seny Dieng in goal. So good goalkeeper for sure. Obviously Middlesbrough last season was so unlucky to not get in the playoff final, but they did fall at the feet of Coventry. And ultimately, they've got some good players, but a lot of them were on loan last season, so they have gone back to their former clubs. So that will be a bit of an issue for Middlesbrough. But look, they're still a very strong side with a good manager as well. I think the work that Michael Carrick has done has been really impressive. Also, they have got Van den Berg from PEC Zwolle, and also Liam Roberts from Barnsley. So some decent pickups, nothing spectacular, but some decent pickups for sure. In terms of sales, I mentioned a few of their loan players. I mean, obviously, going back to Aston Villa, Cameron Archer, he was a great signing last season, and we'll have to see, whether or not he goes back. But also, they've sold Grant Hall. He was a big player for them. He's gone to Rotherham, so that will be a bit of a miss. As will Mark Boller, who a few seasons ago was fantastic for them. But yeah, interesting that. Millwall. Now, Millwall's signings. I mean, Joe Bryan from Fulham's done really not good bit of business because, as I said, with a few of the other players, they've just not had the game time, and Bryan was kind of frozen out at Fulham. It's a surprising one because I thought he was got some ability, but I guess Robinson's been playing more for Fulham more often. So yeah, good left back for Millwall for sure. And then in terms of sales, I mean, look, the main one really is Scott Malone. He's been such a loyal servant at the club at left back, but it was about time he moved on. He's gone to Gillingham now, and Mason Bennett as well moved on to Burton. So yeah, not too much in the way of signings for Millwall so far, but we'll see how the sale of Scott Malone impacts them. I guess Bryan is a perfect replacement. Norwich now, looking at Norwich, I think this is really interesting. I look at these Norwich signings and a few of them, some good business. They didn't have a good season last year, there's no hiding that. But I think Shane Duffy at Fulham was frozen out as well, so he's a really good Championship player. Jack Stacey at Bournemouth also got some ability. And Ashley Barnes is the main one, right? To lead the line. Pookie's now left, so they had to have someone else in. Ashley Barnes has not joined Burnley in the Premier League and is going to be playing for the Canaries, so he is, obviously the old age of 33, so let's see if he's still got it, but certainly knows how to score in the Championship. And it looks like the end of the loan for Milo Rashica, who didn't really have a good campaign, so he got loaned out to Galatasaray, but he might be back. Looking at their other players that they've sold, look, Michael McGovern was their goalie for a few seasons back, but not anymore. Kieran Dow has left to go to Rangers. Obviously, we talked about Pookie, he's gone to Minnesota. And then, of course, Sam Byram as well has been let go. So, a few tough sales there for Norwich. I wonder how much it will hurt them. Looking at Plymouth then, promoted after last season. Really good campaign in League One, it's got to be said. And they've made some interesting signings. Morgan Whittaker from Swansea is a really good signing. I think, he's a young, exciting winger who will do well for them, in my opinion. And they've also gone and got Zach Baker as well from the under-18s for Plymouth. So some interesting recruitments. Certainly, we'll be interested to see how Connor Hazard gets on in goal. Whether or not he'll be number one or not, I don't know. But definitely Whittaker's a good signing for Plymouth. Then sales. I mean, look, a lot of these players I'm not too familiar with, but you got the likes of James Wilson, who I've heard a few things about. He's gone to Bristol Rovers, and also Brandon Purcell has been let go. So yeah, some interesting ones there. But I think Plymouth might do okay this season. We'll have to wait and see with my table. Preston. Now, Preston have made some interesting signings. Dwayne Holmes being one of them from Huddersfield. Good signing, I think. Will Keane as well. After Wigan had a pretty bad season, Will Keane has now switched to Preston. So he's a decent player in the centre forward role. Calvin Ramsey's a really good piece of business, actually, from Liverpool. Really good. Because, he's got a lot of ability, this right back. You know, he was brought in maybe as a backup to some of their right backs. You know, probably not as a right backup for Trent, but look, still got a lot of ability, this Ramsey. And now he's going to get a bit of game time to develop him at 19 years age. So it's a good signing for Preston. And also they've got Jacob Slater as well from the under-18s. So look, some good signings here, especially like Dwayne Holmes and Calvin Ramsey. But then looking at their sales, I mean, obviously Daniel Johnson has left and gone to Stoke, and also Josh Onuma as well. Josh Onuma, a really interesting one. Obviously, he's not quite worked at Preston. He was good at Fulham at periods, but it's just not quite gone for him. So he's gone and left the club. QPR, a club who a lot of fans are saying might have a few problems this season. Obviously, they only just about stayed up with the management of the legend, of course, that is Gareth Ainsworth with that long flowing hair. But they've got some interesting signings. Obviously, Asmir Begovic from Everton, he's getting on, so we'll see how he does. But they needed a goalkeeper, so they've gone and got one. And also they've gone and got Morgan Fox from Stoke. So yeah, it's okay for QPR. I just worry about their season, but we'll have to get to that. In terms of outgoings, Rob Dickey we mentioned earlier for Bristol City. Leon Balogun as well, the former Brighton man at centre-back, has moved from QPR to Rangers. So yeah, he was decent. Seny Dieng as well is going to be a big loss for QPR. Obviously, goalkeeper, very good international, moving over to Middlesbrough. And Stefan Johansson as well, has been at the club for a little bit and he's left the club now. So QPR should be an interesting campaign. Rotherham as well have signed Grant Hall, so that's a good signing actually from Middlesbrough. Solid centre-back there. Cafu as well, after he's really not got the minutes at Nottingham Forest in the Premier League, he's moved to Rotherham. So yeah, some interesting moves there. Outgoings, I mean, look, Ogbene is the main one, right? They're going to miss Ogbene. He's gone to Luton. He was their main man, really, at that winger spot last season for Rotherham. So, really big loss. Of course, Richard Wood is a cult hero for them. He's gone to Doncaster. So, yeah, a couple of interesting sales that are probably going to hurt them. I worry for Rotherham a little bit, I can't lie. Sheffield Wednesday, they've not done too much. And before you adjust your set, no, it's not Reece James from Chelsea. It's Reece James from Blackpool. But Sheffield Wednesday have brought in Delgado as well. I'm not too sure about these two, so we'll have to wait and see if they do any more business. Obviously, Stockdale, bit of an icon at the club. He's gone to York City. And obviously, the main thing for Sheffield Wednesday is their manager. They've gone and got former Watford man, Xisco Munoz. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting if he does well. I mean, it's going to be hard as a Watford fan. I loved him so much, and we just axed him too early, and ultimately, he got us promoted in 2021. So, we'll want to see if they can stay up under his management. Southampton obviously going to have a big clear out with their relegation from the Premier League. Ryan Manning's a good signing from Swansea. I think he's going to be decent at left back. And then in terms of their sales, I mean, Theo Walcott was getting towards the end of his time at there. Diallo's also gone to a team in Qatar. And also they've let go of Willie Caballero, which is kind of sad, but he's retired, so I guess that's fair enough. Mislav Orsic was a shame, really, because a decent player, but he was never going to be in the Championship with Southampton. And also Ndululu has gone to Bolton, so interesting that. Then we look at some others. Stoke City, they've got in a few interesting names. Ben Pearson, one of them, didn't really get the minutes at Bournemouth last season. And they've also gone for Ender Stevens, which actually is a really good signing from Sheffield United at left back, but we'll see how he can fit into that team. Chiquinho is really interesting as well from Wolves. He didn't get the minutes he deserved last season, and he's got a lot of ability. Talking of Wolves, they've gone and got Keanu Hoover, the right back from there. So some interesting signings, and I'm quite impressed by Stoke's business, I can't lie. They might be a bit further up the table than in previous campaigns where they've been kind of 15th, 16th, not doing too well, but maybe they can get a bit higher up. We'll have to see. Peter Itobo as well, obviously, seems to have come back from his loan from Aris Saloniki, the ex-Watford man, of course. Peter Itobo didn't go well for him at the club in Watford, but maybe he'll revive his Stoke career. Who knows? Phil Jagielka, of course, is 40 now, so he had to leave. Also Nick Powell as well, been a bit of a legend for them for a long time, but he's now left. Gone to Stockport. And then, of course, Tashan Oakley-Booth as well. He's now left, as well as Aidan Flint and Sam Clucas. So, yeah, interesting those ones. Some big names leaving Stoke. It'd be interesting to see if that does hurt them quite a bit because they've got a lot of ability. Now we look at Sunderland. Sunderland, for me, are a team that, last season they overachieved, but they were, fair play to them for getting into those playoffs because I didn't see it, and they just snuck in really on that final moment. And you've just got to say fair play. Like, you don't see it often where teams like Sunderland, they get promoted from League One, and straight away they're up in the playoff picture. It's really impressive. But in terms of their signings this year, I mean, Luis Semedo from Benfica's apparently got some ability. I've talked about Joe Bellingham. Look, we know how good this guy could be. Only 17, but so much ability. And in terms of their outgoings, I mean, we wait and see with Amad Diallo. I mean, obviously he was fantastic for them last year. Can they keep him? We'll have to see whether or not he just returns to United, and that's that. But yeah, interesting. I don't really recognise too many of their outgoings. So yeah, a couple of interesting additions. Certainly Joe Bellingham is a good one for Sunderland. Swansea now. Now, Swansea obviously didn't have the greatest of seasons last year, but they will be hopeful of a bit more of a playoff push this time. Jerry Yates is a good signing actually from Blackpool. He was basically their main goal scorer for last season, Jerry Yates, so I think he'll do well. It'll be interesting to see if Swansea do let go of Pirro, because of course he was so key for them last year, and if that's the case, then we'll have to wait and see how Swansea do. But if they can keep Pirro, that'll be a great thing for them, because he was just a proven goal scorer last year. Obafemi's gone to Burnley, of course, for a $4 million fee. So yeah, he's going to be in the Premier League, or at least try and get some minutes for Burnley. And we talked about Ryan Manning and Whittaker. They've both been, fairly, significant sales for Swansea, as has Latib Border. But that's interesting. Yeah, a few interesting sales. Wonder if it will hurt Swansea, that. Now let's talk about my club, Watford. Now, our transfer business has been a bit weird, I can't lie. It started off with some weird ones. We've, of course, now let go of Ismail Assar. He's gone to Marseille. Look, he had flashes. He had moments of brilliance in a Watford shirt, but considering he was our record signing for 40 million, it didn't quite live up to the billing that we thought he would. So, a bit of a shame, that one. But it is what it is, right? It is what it is. Tom Ince, though, is a really good signing. Hopefully he can do well at right wing. Got a proven championship record, always scores against us, so hopefully now can score for us. Reece Healy as well. I've heard good things about him from the French league. Toulouse, he did well back at Toulouse. Obviously had a bit of time, I think, at Cardiff back in the day. But he's really just been a pretty injury-prone player. He did his ACL a few seasons back, so let's just hope he's not another injury-prone striker, because there's been plenty of those for Watford. Livermore, it splits the crowd, I think, Jake Livermore. He's got experience in defensive midfield in the Championship, but is this really where we're getting to, where we're signing ageing players? Like, I don't know. Yeah, obviously, he wasn't great in this recent pre-season game against Palace, but we'll have to hope that Livermore gives us what we need in that defensive midfield alongside maybe Imran Louza. Hopefully we can keep him. There has been a lot of sales, I can't lie, for Watford, including William Troost-Ekong, who has left the club. And I did do a Watford buy, sell, keep, avoid, or buy, sell, loan video. So hopefully, it's mainly sell, keep, the loan video. If you did miss that, do check it out on my channel. It was interesting. And I've actually been keeping track and putting in the comments how the updates have been kind of forming with players that have left, like Hungbo and Troost-Ekong. And we've also sold Mario Gaspar as well. So, yeah, it's just in the comments, you'll see which ones I got right and which ones I got wrong. But some interesting, movements there. Then we've also gone and got Giorgio Chakvedadze. I think that's how you pronounce it, from Ghent. It's a hard one to spell, I can't lie. It's a hard pronunciation. Let's just call him Giorgio. Georgie. Georgie is hopefully going to be good for us. Attacking midfielder, a lot of ability apparently. I've heard, nice young age, 23. Let's hope he can be, the next, I don't know, Will Hughes or Decore. Let's have a look. Vakumbayo is going to split opinion. Obviously, he was loaned out to Charleroi, but at the end of last season, did do some good moments, off the bench goals and things like that, but he just wasn't as good as we thought he would be. Now he's back in pre-season training. Will he start for us? I hope not, but it might be desperate. With Quadro Bar, I feel like he just hasn't got the minutes that he's really deserved, so he's likely going to be loaned out again. He was loaned out at Dusseldorf last year, but we'll have to see. I think Matty Pollock as well is probably going to leave. He was loaned out at Aberdeen last year. Again, I just wait and see with that. Obviously, had a bit of time. I think it was at Cheltenham. Was it Cheltenham a few years ago? Maybe it was Cheltenham. I can't remember now. But ultimately, yeah, just it's not worked for Matty Pollock, unfortunately. And then also we've got Jorge Cabezas. It's the end of his loan. But again, 19-year-old striker. It's a bit of a, Cucho Hernandez situation where we might just never play him until he comes back in 4 seasons and scores on his debut. I don't know. But yeah, I've never heard of him really getting in the team. And the same goes for Passetto. Ignacio Passetto we've had since that 1920 season. He's just never featured, and another loan out looks likely. I can't see him playing. In terms of sales, though, obviously some big ones here that's going to hurt for sure. Joao Pedro is the main one. He was the player of the season for us last year, and he was just too good for us to stay for another championship season. So he's gone to Brighton. I'm so happy for him, to be honest. That is the sort of level he deserves. Europa League football is going to be so exciting for him, and it's with a heavy heart, but of course, this guy is just a different level. It's what Watford do. It's the Watford way. We bring in new, gems, hidden gems. We brought in Pedro, obviously, from Fluminense. We got in Richarlison from Fluminense. We've got these Brazilian ballers, or these young talents, and we make them grow into brilliant players and sell them on for big money. And obviously, it's one of our biggest sales at 32 million to Brighton. That is, very good money. But ultimately, it was expected that we were going to have to let him go. It's just, who will be the next Joao Pedro for Watford? Who can take on that number 10 shirt? Because it's a big responsibility. Ismail Assar, we talked about, has gone to Marseille. It's just a shame. We've halved basically the value we bought him for. Our record signing at 40 million or thereabouts, and we sold him for 20. I mean, it is what it is, but it's a real shame how he's just not quite had that rhythm that he deserves. He's definitely got ability, but it just hasn't quite worked for him. And maybe it's bad timing with COVID and the relegations that we've had and stuff like that. But yeah, just never quite truly reached his potential. But certainly a lot of good moments. That Liverpool game, let's not forget that 3-0. Sarr dinks Alisson, the absolute amazing moment there. Hungbo, now sad to see Hungbo go, I can't lie, because I thought he was going to get involved. Did do really, really well at Huddersfield last year, but now he's gone to Nuremberg. So yeah, real shame that. Keena has also left the club. He's been loaned out constantly, and you just think he's not going to get the minutes. He did score that one Cardiff home goal, but it's just never really worked for him consistently in a Watford shirt. Bacuna was let go. Obviously, not a great season for him. He was okay when he came in, Leandro Bacuna, but at the age of 31, he didn't really get my pulses racing. The same goes for Britt Sombalonga. Look, it was a nice emotional story, right, to return to the club he used to be at. And he did get his goal at home to Birmingham, but look, there was really not much other than that. He was obviously at the age of 30, not the most mobile player. Obviously a lot of strength, good for the championship, but he just wasn't going to stay. Cathcart has also gone. Very sad thing there, but it was inevitable. He's been at the club for so long now. He's been a loyal servant. Craig Cathcart, a few headers, a few iconic moments against Tottenham, but just generally such a solid, reliable player at centre-back. So it's a heavy heart, but it is inevitable that he was going to go. Gaspar, I was a bit surprised by Gaspar, I can't lie, because he did have points last season where he really impressed me, especially when he didn't play that right-back spot and he actually moved a bit more into the midfield. He did really well for Watford. But yeah, no, clearly, it's not in Valérien Ismaël's plans. So he's now been released. Cleverley as well. Tom Cleverley, captain, leader, legend. What a guy. Just what a human being. Legend of the football club. He's been at the club for a few times with loan spells. Just so unlucky with injuries. He's a fantastic footballer. I've done everything really at the top level. Won the leagues, won the cups with United, played with Villa, played with Everton, all these big clubs. And yeah, Cleverley's been a legend. But great to see that he's staying at Watford in terms of managing the under-18s. Really exciting, or at least he's on the management staff team. So really exciting that. But it's just what a career. It's just a shame it was so much filled with injury. Henrique Arouge didn't work really from Benfica. I thought there was a player there, but he just didn't have the strength or the ability really to do what was needed. And he is pretty confident going to be leaving. So yeah, Arouge was not strong enough for the Championship, didn't have the impact that I thought he would. Certainly a great player in there. We just couldn't get the best out of him, or even get the minutes out of him, to be honest. And then Hassan Kamara, left back, 29 years old. He was a controversial one last season where we decided to basically loan him out back to Udinese, but then keep him to the end of the season to kind of balance the books. We had to sell him for that bit of money. So yeah, 8 million. We had to do something because the club is struggling a little bit financially. But it's really sad because that first season he was with us in the Premier League, he was one of our best players, but didn't have a good campaign last year, that's for sure. So yeah, he's gone. So some interesting business. I'm not too enthralled by transfer activity. I think Ince is a good signing. I'm excited, I think, by Healy, but outside of that, it's been pretty dodgy so far. And obviously, when you're going to lose Raul Pedro, it's pretty hard to replace him. So we'll have to see if we do any more. I don't think we'll do much more because we don't make a lot of transfers. We don't have enough money to splash the cash. So West Brom, Karlan Grant. Now, Karlan Grant obviously is a big player for them. He's gone to Cardiff. And also, they've let go of Jake Livermore, and he's gone to Watford. So, yeah, interesting. Not much going here. I mean, they've sold Darragh O'Shea to Burnley, so he's going to be lining up for the Premier League club there. But I'm not too enthused by West Brom's business. And that is where we end things, really, with the clubs. So, yeah, some interesting ones, I've got to say. But what does that mean for my predictions, then? Shall we have a little look at my Championship table? Let's go. In previous years, I've had a thing, with a fancy, slideshow showing the table and all that. We're just going to go back to basics and read it out this year, just for the purposes of time. In 24th place, I'm going with Rotherham United. I think Rotherham actually are going to struggle this season. Now, we talked about some of their sales. Ogbene is going to be a real miss for them. And I just feel that Rotherham, they've always been near or thereabouts in flirting with relegation. I think this year it will be too tough for them, and they'll finish bottom, in my opinion. So, 24th place, Rotherham United. In 23rd, though, we're going to go with Plymouth Argyle, and maybe it's a bit harsh. We've looked at Plymouth. They've had a great season last year, but they've not been in the Championship for a long time, and I think it is a big step up, ultimately, so I'm not too confident if they're going to do amazingly, but we'll have to see, I guess. We'll have to see what goes down. With Plymouth, I think they are going to struggle to adapt, but it'll be interesting to see. Of course, we actually have Plymouth second game of the season. After that first home game against QPR, we've got Plymouth, so it will be exciting to see if that one goes well. But yeah, there will be an interesting team for sure. Looking at then 22nd place, I'm gone for QPR. Now, I talked about, I think Gareth Ainsworth will make this team interesting. Obviously, they've brought in Begovic, but I just worry for QPR. They leaked so many goals last season. Of course, Ainsworth did what he does, kept them up, but can he do it a second time? I'm just not sure this time. And, through the years, they've let go of some big players like, Eberechi Eze. And obviously, in the past, they had other great players. So, I just worry for them. I do. I think it's going to be tight, though, in the relegation battle. Once again, it's going to be, right to the wire. Ipswich in 21st, though. I think Ipswich have got enough just about to stay up. They've looked really good last season. I know you'll say, if you're saying Ipswich, why are you not saying Plymouth? But I think Ipswich, they've been in this Championship, before. They've certainly know how to do it. And ultimately, I think their rivalry with Norwich is going to motivate them to do well. They might, at this rate, the way Norwich are playing, might even beat them in one of the two of those games. But generally, I think Ipswich are a really well-run club, and I think they'll just find a way to do well. But I would like to see a bit more from them in the transfer market. But they'll just about scrape safety, Ipswich Town, in 21st. In 20th place, we've gone with Sheffield Wednesday. Now, I do feel it's going to be a tricky one for Sheffield Wednesday to keep safe. But I think, ultimately, right, they've got a few good players like Windass. And if they do well under Xisco Munoz, I'll be happy for him. I'll be honest. I'll be happy for him. It's just, I think that they will have struggles, but maybe they can just about do what they need to do. Okay, I'm going to have to leave you there for a second. I'm hopeful that I'll come back and it will stay there. So just bear with, sorry. Sorry, people. I apologise for that disruption. Notice anything different? Oh yeah, baby. The Watford shirt's arrived. Love to see it. It is an absolute banger. Now, obviously, it doesn't look too good with the white t-shirt underneath, but it will look so much better now. Look at this. It's an absolute banger. Absolute banger. And guess what's on the back, my people? Oh yeah. Number 10. Let's go. You just love to see it, don't you, really? Number 10. It's Roberto at your service. But yeah, sorry. I needed to just get that. But going back to what I was talking about. I was talking about 20th spot. And I think, yeah, Sheffield Wednesday will finish there. So, yeah, that's what I reckon. But, oh, this shirt, honestly, it's the best. It's so good. One of the best Watford shirts I've seen for a long time. But, yeah, let's get back to, Sheffield Wednesday 20th. I think they've got some good players there. Windass, as I said. And I'd like Xisco to do well. Of course I would. It'll be a tight one, though, as I said. Interesting relegation battle for sure. 19th spot, though, we're going with Bristol City. Now, I think Bristol City will be a very interesting team next season because they had points where they really struggled under Nigel Pearson. Whether or not that will happen again, I don't know. But ultimately, right, I think when it comes to it, Bristol City will defensively be a bit leaky and therefore they will be flirting with the relegation. But they'll just do enough, I think. 19th spot for Bristol City. Then 18th, we've gone with Blackburn. Now, this is a bit of a shock one because there was points that we thought Blackburn might get the playoffs, right? But the sale of Ben Brereton Diaz is going to really hurt them, in my opinion. And, you know, they've got a very decent team, of course. They've got a very decent manager as well. But I just think they're going to have a massive drop-off. I don't know why. I just got this feeling in my bones. Blackburn, sorry, but I'm going to put you in 18th spot. Then we move on to 17th. This is where I'm putting Hull City. Now, Hull, I think Hull will have another okay-ish season. Mid-table sort of flirting with relegation a little bit, but they'll do enough, I think. They've got some decent players. They've got a decent quality of a squad. And, you know, ultimately, they're just steady. They're not spectacular, but they'll do the job. So 18th for Blackburn, 17th for Hull. In 16th, though, we've gone with Sunderland. I think Sunderland, as I said earlier, did overachieve a little bit to get in those playoffs. I don't think that's going to happen this time around, though, especially if they can't hold or bring back Amad Diallo, because he was so big for them. Also, I think Tony Mowbray's side will just defensively struggle a bit more this season. I think teams will work them out, and maybe it will be harder for them to get the goals they need. But look, I think they'd still take survival. Obviously, they did only get promoted 2 seasons ago, so it's pretty crazy where their expectations have changed. But I think 16th, it will be an okay season, I guess, just a bit of a drop-off. 15th, Preston. I think Preston each year, they don't really excite me that much, but they do a job. They do what they needed to. And I think Preston ultimately will do just that. 15th spot for me. So then we move on. Oh, just look at this shirt again. Sorry, it's just so good. I can't get over it. It's just the best shirt I think I've seen in a Watford for Watford for a long time. I just got to zoom in on this because it's not getting the coverage it deserves. There it is. Oh, unbelievable, Jeff. Wow. Going back to what I was saying then. In 14th spot, we're going for Cardiff City. Now, I think Cardiff ultimately are an interesting side because I look at them and think, bringing in Aaron Ramsey, of course we know he's a brilliant player, but has he lost it? Has he really still got it in the tank? And defensively, they were a bit of a problem last season. So I think you'll see a few more YouTubers put Cardiff a bit lower than 14th. But I think they've got to be better, right? Haven't they? They've got to improve. And, you know, maybe some more signings could help them just be fairly safe in mid-table. So I'll say 14th. Then 13th, Birmingham City. Now, I think Birmingham were a bit of a problem last season. Defensively, they were just a bit too suspect most of the time. But then, as I say, John Eustace did do a good job there. So I think they'll be steady and they'll actually have a bit more ambitions to go further up the table. Maybe even an outside push for the playoffs. But I think 13th would be a very good season for them. Then in 12th spot, we've got Stoke. Now, I've talked about with Stoke, you know, some of their signings looking quite tasty. Also, one of them being, of course, the Sheffield United left back. I think that's a really good signing to get in. So I just think Stoke will have a good season. I think their additions have been impressive. You know, I think ultimately they've got a good manager, and they'll just do a decent job. 12th spot for Stoke, banging mid-table. Then we move to 11th place, and I've gone with Swansea here. Now, Swansea, a lot of this depends on if you keep Joel Pirot, because he is so key for you. But I think Swansea have always been there or thereabouts, maybe pushing for playoffs. But I still feel their defence is a bit of an issue. That some teams, some YouTubers, will put Swansea a bit lower down than this. But I think they'll do a bit better this season. 11th spot for them. Then I've got 10th spot, and I'm putting Huddersfield. I think Huddersfield are going to have another push for the playoffs like they did a few seasons back. I know that it was a bit rocky for Huddersfield, and Neil Warnock obviously came in, saved them yet again. It's what he does. But ultimately, I don't think that Huddersfield are that bad. I think they've got a decent squad. Obviously, Joe Hungbo was good for them. Obviously, he's not going to be there next season, but still, it's a decent squad in my opinion. If they just add a few more exciting signings, a bit more youth, then they could really do all right and push for the top 10, maybe. 9th spot, though, I've gone for Norwich. Now, with Norwich, I feel that last season was a real underachievement. Do I think they're going to underachieve massively again? Possibly not. They might push more towards the playoffs this time around, but I still feel there's a bit too many issues going on at Norwich. Now, I've got to say, I'm impressed with their business so far. They've made some good signings, but that's not everything, right? Pookie's pretty hard to replace, ultimately, and we'll have to just see how it goes. But I think with Norwich, they're going to at least have a better season, finishing 9th. Then we've got Millwall in 8th. That's what I'm going for. I think Millwall, it's incredible, really, that Millwall didn't finish in the playoffs last season, because they were there or thereabouts for so long. But then they kind of bottled it towards the end, to put it bluntly. Millwall, though, still a decent squad, and certainly will have ambitions of going for the playoffs again. So I think maybe they'll just fall a little bit short here, but still a good season for Millwall in 8th spot. Then 7th, we've got West Bromwich Albion. I think West Brom were also a team I was a bit surprised didn't really get in the playoffs last year, but they did have a bit of inconsistency towards the latter stage, and ended up finishing like 9th or 10th or something, I think. So yeah, not great for West Brom, but again, they're a big club. They've got some decent players, a decent foundation there. They just need to tweak a few things here and there. But I'm going to say 7th for West Brom. Then 6th is yours truly, Watford. Now, I did predict us to finish in the automatics last season. That was when we just got relegated. So I thought, how bad can it be? It was a lot worse than I'd feared. And we've ended up finishing, I can't even remember now because it was such an irrelevant season. But I think it was 11th or 10th or 12th, one of those places. Basically, much worse than we'd expected. We thought we'd have at least been in that top 6 picture, but never really looked like getting into it. We were so shambolic for a lot of the season. So this is a big season for us to prove that we're not just going to be a mid-table team every season. I mean, look, I'm not expecting playoffs massively because our signings have just not been that exciting. A lot of people are just saying we're going to finish 10th, we're going to finish 14th again, but it would be depressing. But maybe that's just where we're at now. We're just a championship mid-table club. But I've got to be optimistic because where's the fun in being pessimistic, right? So yeah, we're going to go for it. We're going to see if we can try and push for some sort of promotion, and I think we'll squeeze into the playoffs if we're lucky, if we're very lucky. And I think Valérien Ismaël is a good manager, so hopefully he gets us back to the kind of form that we've been playing in previous championship promotion seasons, and ultimately let's hope he gets back to the style of manager he was at Barnsley, where he did really well and got Barnsley into the playoffs. Moving on to 5th, we've got Coventry. Now, I did talk about Coventry and say, Gyökeres is a massive loss for them, but I still don't think that their whole team is a massive loss because they've still got enough good players there. And as I mentioned earlier, a really good manager in Mark Robins. Whether or not they do change up the manager or they do change up the tactics or some of the personnel, we'll have to wait and see. But I think Coventry have just got a lot going for them. They've been another team that have gone on a real big progression in the last couple of years. They weren't really looking at playoffs for a few seasons ago. They were looking at staying up or being mid-table, but now they're really doing well, and I was really impressed with them last season. A big thing, of course, will be if they can keep Gustavo Hamer, because he's so key for them, and there's rumours of him moving elsewhere, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess. Ellis Sims is a really smart piece of business, so I think Coventry, I rate you, and I think you'll finish in the playoff spots, 5th spot. Then it's 4th. I'm going for Leeds United. Now, Leeds, of course, relegated from the Premier League. They were defensively shambolic most of the season, and it was just a matter of if, not when. when not if they got relegated, because they were just so leaky. And even Big Sam, the guy who always keeps teams up, couldn't even save them. So yeah, big problems. I think they do need a big season, because obviously, they're a big fan base. If they do have a bad season, it will really hurt the club. But we'll have to see. They've sold a lot of their key players, so they're going to have to rebuild. But I think they're good enough and big enough to at least get in the playoffs. So 4th place. Then 3rd is Middlesbrough. I think Middlesbrough was so unlucky to not be automatic, or even, more likely finishing through the playoffs, getting that 3rd spot, because they were so good all season, in my view. They just dropped off a little bit towards the end, but so did Sheffield United, and they got promoted automatically. So yeah, really good manager, Michael Carrick, and I've talked about Middlesbrough already, but I think they're good enough to finish again in the playoffs. But whether or not they can do it in the playoffs this time around and get through, we'll have to wait and see. 2nd spot, though, getting that 1st automatic spot, is Southampton. Now, Southampton, obviously, been a Premier League regular for a long time, so it was a big shock. Obviously, not many people would have said they would have gone down last season, but when you looked at how they performed, they were very, very poor defensively. And I guess it had been coming a little bit, because they'd had a few 9-0s and that kind of thing. But yeah, they just relied way too much on youth last season. But they brought in a really exciting manager in Russell Martin, and I think he can do really well for them. Obviously, it wasn't ideal how it went for him at Swansea, but he's a Championship experienced manager, and they've made a few interesting additions. I mean, look, it's early days, right, with Southampton, and we'll have to wait and see if they really do fulfill their potential. But I think Southampton, they're certainly a club that feel too big to stay in the Championship, and Ryan Manning's a good one. Obviously from Swansea, you got the connection there, and obviously let's see if Ward-Prowse leaves, which you'd imagine he does, but they still haven't sold him yet. So he's their talisman, of course. I think they can do it though. They've got a good enough squad, even for the Championship, even if it is young. They can get bounced back at the first time of asking. And then finally, who are we saying for the title? There's only one team left that it can be. It's Leicester City to win the title. Now, of course, I'd like to see Watford win the title, because we've not won much silverware in our history. We've won a few things, but very, very, very little. But Leicester, of course, they have got a very good team. Of course, they've sold Maddison and Barnes and Tielemans. You'd expect all of this. But even if they have a lot of those players leave, they've still got a strong enough squad for Championship level to do well, I think. And ultimately with Leicester, I don't know much about their new manager, I'll be honest, but I still feel they're good enough and well supported enough to bounce back and to win the title, and go for it. So therefore, Leicester, you are my champions for the new season. So, moving quickly on, what are our top scorers for the upcoming campaign? Well, if I think that Southampton and Leicester will be up there, I've got to pick a top scorer from one of those two teams. And I'm going to say the top scorer for Leicester City, yes, Leicester will have the top scorer in their ranks. And don't worry, it's not going to be Harry Winks, and it's not going to be Jamie Vardy, who probably needs to hang his boots up. Instead, I think Leicester City's top scorer is going to be Kelechi Iheanacho. Now, you might say that's a silly shout, because there's been rumours of him leaving Leicester and moving to, say, Nottingham Forest, for instance. But if he does stay, he will absolutely destroy the Championship. There's no doubt. Iheanacho has got a lot of ability. If it isn't Iheanacho, though, I'm going to switch it up to Southampton, because they also have some decent players. And one player I've been really intrigued by is Nathan Tella. Now, obviously, if he goes to Burnley, then this will be in the mud. But I think Southampton will try and keep Tella. And if he does play for them, I think he'll be top scorer. If, for Leicester, Iheanacho doesn't stay. So that's my top scorer prediction. Top assister of the season, though, I'm going to go for a team from Leeds United who does rack up the assists. And this player is going to be a little bit of... Yes, believe it or not, I think Leeds United's top assister and the Championship's top assister this season will be their player who's going to come back for a second spell, Helder Costa. It's a gamble, of course, I know, he could leave, but I think he'll actually do really well. I think Helder Costa will come back, he'll prove why he should have, been playing more recently in past seasons, and Helder Costa, top assister. That really could backfire. So, just for that, I'm going to have one in reserve, because I know it's going to be risky if I don't. So instead, we're going to have the backup to that from Middlesbrough. And this man, to get the top assist second after the man from Leeds, is of course Akpom from Middlesbrough. So that's my pick. Now we move up to the most clean sheets of the season. And if Southampton are going to have a good campaign, they need to have a good goalkeeper. And to be honest, with Southampton, I looked at them last season. They defensively were so poor. And I just worried for them keeping clean sheets. They didn't keep enough. And I think for that reason that their man in goal, Mateus Liz, is going to be the top clean sheet point scorer. Okay? Most clean sheets in the league, Mateus Liz. Now we've got ones to watch for the new season. Right? Ones to watch. I think there's a few players that should be ones to watch. One of them is Windass for Sheffield Wednesday because he's obviously a cult hero for them and I think he will do well. Another one to watch for the Championship season in terms of players that I think you certainly should keep an eye on. Obviously these players might not be brilliant, but they're just, keep an eye on them. See how they get on because they could do bits. Is for Watford, actually. As much as I don't tend to be optimistic these days with Watford's depressing state, I think I'm going to go for it. Tom Ince. I think he's one to watch because he was so good in previous seasons for Reading and Blackpool as well, don't forget, and Stoke. He's done it everywhere, so I think he can do it here, and I'm hoping that our team will be set up for him to thrive. So one to watch, Tom Ince. Another one I've got, which is one to watch, is a player from Middlesbrough, and it's Fry. I think Fry was really good last season. I think he'll be really good again. And then finally, we're going to end it off with West Brom's very own Swift. I think he will have another good season. So he is one to watch. Right, that is where we're going to end the video. Just finally ending on who is my surprise package for the season that I think will do well and not many people will see it coming. Well, I'm going to say Huddersfield because I've got to, practice what I preach. I've put them in 10th. I think they're going to have a good season, surprise a few people, and those are my predictions for the Championship 23-24 season. Hope you have enjoyed. As I say, get your predictions down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.